Let's continue on with part 2 of the FEMCO twin silos and Frederick E. Murphy story. As mentioned in part 1, Frederick and Catherine Murphy continued to purchase other farms in Wilkin County, Minnesota. FEMCO Farm number 3 was located in Mitchell Township and is shown in this 1939 aerial photo. Look at all the trees and shrubs that were planted around the farmstead. This is a photo of Edward Mead, the FEMCO office manager, in a rye field at farm number 3. FEMCO farm number 4 was just north of farm number 1, also in Connolly Township. This aerial photo from 1939 shows the parcel of land and the 2 farmsteads that were located on the property. This photo shows Paul Miller, the foreman of farm number 4, riding what looks to be a Farmall 12 tractor with his daughter, Mary Ellen. FEMCO farm number 5 was located in Manston Township, basically across the township line from farm number 3. This 1939 aerial photo shows the farmstead, where a good number of trees and shrubs had also been planted. So those were the 5 farms. On these farms, Murphy raised Percheron horses, purebred Holstein dairy cows, Duroc Jersey hogs, Shropshire sheep, and White Orpington chickens. Starting with the Percheron horses, Murphy went all the way to Paris, France, to purchase 6 of these horses. Once back in the States, a pair, Adesseur and Margot, won multiple awards at various livestock competitions. Adesseur was the stallion, and he captured top honors at the Minnesota State Fair in 1928. As far as the Holstein cows, Frederick created a thoroughbred herd of about 200 to 250 on his farms. Most of them were given fancy names, like Miss Mutual, Rose, DeCole. This is a photo of Mr. and Mrs. Murphy on a livestock buying trip. Catherine was just as interested as Frederick in buying expensive animals for their farms. Here is a photo of Mrs. Murphy with one of her Holstein purchases. This is a photo of Frederick at a livestock auction in Des Moines, Iowa. Finally, this is a photo of Mr. and Mrs. Murphy from September 1933, dressed in their fancy clothes. Buying thoroughbred livestock was not cheap. At one sale, Mr. Murphy bought a single cow for $6,000, and 13 cows total for just over $20,000. That would equate to about $374,000 today, so definitely not cheap. After starting his Holstein herd, Murphy took out advertisements in various livestock magazines, touting their milk and butter production numbers. One of the cows, Aurora Homestead Badger, was one of his foundation cows. Frederick also touted his Holstein bulls, like this one, Pride of Sir Pete's, who was 5 years old. The Murphys showed their cattle all across the country, taking ribbons at Kansas City, Portland, and in their home state of Minnesota. In 1926 alone, they took 11 Grand, 11 Senior, and 13 Junior Championships, 47 first prizes, and 43 second prizes. Some of the award winners were DeCole, Clothilde Monona, Blue Earth Duke Ormsby, and May Walker Ollie Homestead. In 1930, the Murphys made national news when they purchased Miss Jewel Ormsby Peavy, the pride of Iowa. This is a photo of Frederick at the sale, standing behind Miss Jewel. The governor of Iowa stood to the right of Murphy, and he didn't look very happy at what had just transpired. Miss Jewel had to be transported by rail back to Breckenridge, and a crowd of Minnesota leaders gathered to meet the famous Holstein at Minneapolis. Frederick is shown on the left side of the photo. This is another photo of Miss Jewel standing with Axel Hansen, manager of FEMCO Farms, Mr. Murphy, and the governor of Minnesota, Theodore Christensen. Christensen looks a lot happier than his counterpart did in Iowa. In 1932, another Holstein at FEMCO, Lady Pride, Pontiac Lukji, set a yearly record for butter and milk production. This is another photo of Lady Pride, who was also a grand champion at the Minnesota State Fair. Finally, this is a photo of Frederick E. Murphy standing next to Lady Pride. World records kept coming for the FEMCO Holsteins, and FEMCO Johanna Bass-Fane produced wins in 1933 and 1935. In 1933, she produced over 1,500 pounds of butter in 365 days. This is a photo of FEMCO Johanna standing in the pasture of FEMCO Farm Number 1. This is the same photo, but it shows a slightly wider perspective. If you look closely, you can see the FEMCO Farm clay tile silos in the back. As mentioned, FEMCO Johanna was a double world record holder, and 1935 was her second title. The Murphys proudly displayed her in the Livestock Pavilion at the Minnesota State Fair that fall. Records were meant to be broken, and FEMCO Alma was next, breaking the butter record for 2-year-olds. This is a photo of FEMCO Alma taken at FEMCO Farms. Moving on to the Shropshire sheep, Murphy purchased most of his herd from George McCarrow and Sons in Wisconsin. In addition to all the livestock competitions, the FEMCO farms were demonstration farms to people and farmers from around the world. Groups of businessmen traveled to Breckenridge to see how the Murphy farms operated and to get a glimpse of his famous livestock. Workers at FEMCO farms would hand out FEMCO cocktails with a side of donuts to the visitors. Politicians like Governor William Langer of North Dakota also visited the farms. This is a photo of Axel Hansen in a cornfield, Edward H. Meade in a field of barley, 2 Farmall tractor operators planting a field of oats, planting oats the old-fashioned way using horse teams, a 5-horse team pulling a 24-foot harrow after it had been seeded with barley, 2 men standing in a field of barley, a team of hired hands shocking barley in a field, 2 men tossing bundles of barley into a thresher, and Axel Hansen and the Vice President of Northrop King admiring the FEMCO corn. As you can imagine, FEMCO farms needed laborers, tractor drivers, teamsters, foremen, cooks, milkers, and truck drivers to keep up. It was a big operation. As for buying land, the Murphys also bought land near Battle Lake, Minnesota, which was in nearby Otter Tail County. They named this piece of property the Glendalough Game Farm. Glendalough means the Valley of Two Lakes. This old plat map shows the location of the Glendalough Game Farm, which was divided between Everett's and Girard townships. The game farm spread around Lakes Blanche, Emma, Annie Battle, Sunset, and Molly Stark. This is another map of the game farm from the Minneapolis Tribune. Here is a 1939 aerial photo of the game farm with Sunset Lake circled on each image. On the Glendalough Game Farm, the Murphys raised turkeys, pheasants, ducks, and geese. There was also a resident population of deer. Let's start by looking at the turkey aspect of the operation. The game farm raised about 8,000 turkeys a year. Of that number, about 1,000 hens were kept for breeding. About 250 were sold to other turkey growers, leaving about 7,000 to be sold for the holiday tables of America. This is a photo of a corner of the turkey pen at Glendalough, which shows a shelter, an outdoor roost, and several brooder houses. Once again, Murphy took out several full-page ads to showcase his turkeys. The exact details are a little hard to make out, as they are full-page ads. And finally, Frederick with a pair of his turkeys sitting on his latest automobile. Glendalough also raised ringneck pheasants, about 10,000 of them. Some of the pheasants were released into the wild, and some were harvested for grocery sale as well. Mallard ducks were raised on the game farm. About 8,000 ducks were raised a year, and most of these departed on their own. This is a photo of some of the ducks sitting on Sunset Lake. Sunset Lake was where the ducks spent most of their time, but wild rice, celery, and potatoes were also planted around Lake Emma for the ducks. Some of the Glendalough ducks were banded, and this graphic shows how many bands were returned to the game farm from hunters in different states and provinces in 1932. Canada geese were also a small part of Glendalough. This photo shows a couple of the geese shown at a local sportsman's show. Finally, as mentioned, there was a resident population of white-tailed deer. This usually numbered about 40 in total, including Minnie, a doe, shown here. To feed the game on the farm, they raised corn, millet, buckwheat, alfalfa, oats, sunflower, sweet clover, and various berry trees. As with his other properties, Frederick planted thousands of trees. This is a photo of the pheasant pen. A pheasant nest, where eggs were collected, the inside of the incubator house, one of the brooder houses, and another photo of the turkey pen. Frederick hired Thomas J. Peterson to manage the game farm, then David D. Severson, when Mr. Peterson moved on. The Glendalough Game Farm also served as a conference center for group tours and inspections, and agricultural gatherings and conferences. This is one group of agricultural leaders posing for a photo, with Mr. Murphy in the front center. Glendalough was also the base for fishing excursions and hunting trips. Once again, Frederick is shown on the right of this photo. Finally, horses from the game farm came in handy when cars got stuck in the snow during the winter. These are the two images that show Sunset Lake. The red line on the right shows the road that led to the game farm. Let's zoom into the area within the red rectangle. This close-up shows the lines of trees that were planted along the road to the game farm. It also shows some of the game pens, or enclosures, along the south edge of Sunset Lake. Finally, there were some support buildings along the southwest edge of the lake. Let's also take a closer look just a bit further to the north. Again, you can see the trees that lined the roads. More game farm support buildings were shown in the middle of the image, along with more pens or enclosures. The actual lodge was on the northwest edge of Annie Battle Lake. This is a photo of the main lodge. Some of the smaller cabins along the lakeshore, the landscaped grounds around the lodge, a dock and boats in Annie Battle Lake, another photo of the manicured gardens on the grounds, and another larger house near the main lodge. As you can imagine, the Glendalough Game Farm required a lot of labor, including farm help, cooks, poultry handlers, housekeepers, and general laborers. That concludes part 2 of the Frederick E. Murphy story. Stay tuned, as there is one more part to this intriguing story. That concludes the video. Make sure to check out my other YouTube videos and my primary website at mnbricks.com.